Hi, today is the 18th of June 2022. Thanks for tuning in to my official YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe to my official YouTube channel. Make sure to like my official YouTube videos. If you're going to leave a comment, make sure to have etiquette and respect. Go to my website, www.susanmeeling.com, which is the same as www.ladydorybell.com. So, I was listening to a different Fox News clip, a few different, also in addition, a statement made by, at that time, if I recall correctly, he was President Ronald Reagan. I will include the links for this official YouTube video of mine so you understand the reference points. So, I have been involved in a lot of areas. When you're born and raised in New Jersey, especially the area of New Jersey that I was raised, that Tri-Township area, not Tri, T-R-Y, but T-R-I, in reference to Greco-Roman Latin. In that Tri-Township area, other areas would consider it a county, okay? When you're raised in that area and you have a certain specific upbringing, so my biological father had been in foster care and orphanages in his childhood and teenage years, later childhood and teenage years. So it had been in the New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey areas mainly. He had earned a certification through the School of Bulova and somewhere else I can't remember, and he had been certified to fix and repair Bulova watches, Seiko watches, Rolex watches, Bovado watches, a few others. And in addition to that, because of the other certification, he was capable to certify gemstones or gemology in that particular reference. With that type of employment as a version of contracting, he had to travel from one location to the next to whatever aspects of, and while some people would be capable to drop certain things off for him to work on, it would only be in certain locations. But a lot of times he would get a call from someone, he'd go out to the location, he'd look at whatever needed to be looked at, would take care of whatever business, and then if he couldn't repair it on the spot, he would take it back to the house that I grew up in, and he'd work on it after giving them a certain amount of time to their knowledge as to what it would take and whatever fees as to that particular factor, okay? My biological mother, on the other hand, worked at and for Prudential, doing information technology, software, design, whatever it's called. Back in the 1980s, though. So that's before this year of 2022. So this year of 2022, you have most likely hundreds, if not into the thousands, of specific type of certifications regarding information technology, regarding coding. My biological mother had worked at Prudential, but was one of those individuals where if there was a need, she would be paid to the time frame of, okay, so whatever work in that reference, she would have a flight that was booked for her, paid for by the company, a hotel that was booked for her by the company, and so on and so forth, and whatever time frame of, that is the level my biological mother was in the 1980s and 1990s. I am the firstborn. So my biological father had worked on those watches and jewelry up until about the year of 1996, 1997. Okay. My biological little sister is 4 years younger. she did not have because of the 4 years, plus the 5 years that she did not have any memories in those capacities. So you have a 9-year difference between my biological little sister to myself. So I grew up going around the different areas with my biological father, which, yes, some of the similar areas to the fact of him having been in orphanages and foster care. So in the 5 boroughs, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and then the state of New Jersey. It's common sense in those references. So his work in this regard, well, there are those who know who are the individuals who can afford a Bulova watch. There are those who know what it is as far as employment and or what have you, to afford a Seiko watch. And I'm not talking about new, although yes, I'm talking about in the 1980s and 1990s, okay? Which in those time frames you had the years before and the decades before of the 1960s and 1970s before the 1980s and 1990s. So my biological mother, she has 2 half-sisters and 2 half-brothers, okay? I have brought up that I have an issue with certain situations. Now, I have been capable to be around certain types of locations because of my biological father's work. Again, there are those who know in reference to, for those who don't know, there are differences between jewelry pieces okay? So maybe there is a reference, especially regarding celebrities and pop culture, okay? And so maybe in reference to these celebrities and pop culture, some spouse got caught doing something he wasn't supposed to be doing, literally. And maybe that spouse had, here, let's do a big announcement because look at the pretty that was purchased essentially to make up for what had occurred. So there is that reference. Now, in the reference of that little pretty little shiny trinket, okay, so that spouse would have had a fairly decent whatever as far as engagement ring and wedding band, okay? And in this particular references during the 1980s and 1990s, though I'm sure since the 2000s and 2010s into the 2020s, there's a little bit of that, okay? And so in the 1980s and 1990s, I grew up with this. I got to see it in person, face to face in person. I got to hold these pieces in my hands as far as certain things. And so my biological father would explain certain things. Yes, he was a deacon of Old Denton Presbyterian Church, and so, he also had been in orphanages and foster care. So that takes things to a very different level as to certain types, okay? And so I had told people the truth. So in the year of 2004 into 2005, specifically in the month of the first event I attended was in December of 2004. I had been to classes and demos in October and November of 2004, but my first event was in 2004 in December. And then there was a little bit in 2005 up until about May. I had other things that were going on in my life, took a step back. However, I had informed people that I had a head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000 when I was in basic training. This was in San Antonio, Texas. Military City, USA. Okay? And so I had issues regarding my memories. I had a subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain at that time. It wouldn't be for another 4.5 years before the full dissipation out of the view of the MRI and CAT scans. And so when that occurred, as far as those time frames, I told people I had memories, but I couldn't explain the memories I had. And so I was heavily involved regarding classes and demos so I could learn to be capable to express through words as to what I had seen when I was a child, a teenager. Because I was born and raised in New Jersey. And so my biological mother has knowledge as to some pictures. Same thing with St. John Vianney High School as far as the pictures regarding drawings I had made, created, okay? Different designs regarding, well, sure, you can call it a costume. You could also call it lingerie. I guess it depends on what your viewpoint. And so the irony is, in a prior official YouTube video of mine, I described some of the recommendations I had made for a performance I had been in the year 2011, and to a T, with the exception of the chiffon and one aspect of that particular Jack-in-the-Box character for that performance at that exotic Easter, is literally what I drew in regards of when I was at St. John Vianney High School for that particular performance piece. With the because there were more than one in regards of, and so the decorations as two, okay? So that gives you an idea, though, as to a few areas that I've been around, and especially in the 1980s and 1990s, it wasn't as really hush-hush as it was in the state of Texas, because it was the 1980s and 1990s, which was after the 1960s and 1970s. So my biological mother has a specific half-sister, and she was into this hippy-dippy stuff, okay? Well, I had not ever seen anybody with classes and demos in comparison, though there were certain factors as to certain areas that would qualify in regards to that hippy-dippy stuff because of the reality in the 1980s and the 1990s, okay? And so, in the year of 2009, I started modeling before having been in what is supposed to be considered the adult consenting lifestyle. And not that I had modeled in the lifestyle itself, it was more along the lines of I had worn outfits that I created myself, and I went to whatever events, and it was as it was during those time frames, especially most specifically from 2009 through 2012. Okay. So I had informed these people the same way that I had in 2004 to 2005 as to the after effects of my head injury from Palm Sunday in 2000. People in Washington State have this reference of a couple of females who came in and had asked if anybody would be willing to discuss certain things, and they did word it as willing, discuss, questions, what have you, so on and so forth, in comparison to what I explained as well. I had a head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. I deal with headaches and migraines, though I also deal with memory deficits and cognitive disorders. And so I've been working on getting my memories back so that way I can work on other stuff, because where I was born and raised has the highest amount of people who commuted to the World Trade Center and the New York City area. And so I know a few things, and I'm working really, really diligently so that way I can actually assist where I can. So that translates now in the year 2022, I suppose that if you didn't know exactly what I said was exactly what I meant, now you know. Okay? It's supposed to be the consenting adult lifestyle. That translates to everybody has to be informed officially and capable to actually consent. So with the knowledge that I explained, which is easy to understand, I had a head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000 when I was in basic training. You don't actually need to know the details as to how I had a head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000 during basic training to understand that I had a head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000 when I was in basic training. If you need those details, it's because a drill sergeant picked me up and shook me and then threw me into the metal part of a bunk. And that's all I can remember. As far as the specific time frame, there's other stuff regarding my basic training here and there, memories, whatever, but that's not my head injury part. My head injury part is one specific aspect, and that's it. Okay? The subarachnoid hemorrhage formed because of the blunt force trauma, because of how hard it was. It lasted as long as it did because of the traumatic brain injury being that heavy. Okay? However, I did the pretty words because I didn't want to go into the other details, especially with everything else that was going on in my life at that time. Okay? I have an actual dent in my skull because of this head injury I had when I was in basic training in the Army. Okay? But that set of details is not as important. Not in the larger aspects of. It's just as simple as, especially with as many people who have gotten into those little acronyms, such as TBI, or for other ones, LOL, right? Or YOLO, in comparison. So, by technicalities, I suppose YOLO as to my time in basic training in the Army. I guess by technicalities. And in that reference of, this is where I am actually making fun of people, just so you know. So, LOL, I suppose I YOLO'd in regards to the Army in reference to my time in basic training because, you know, YOLO, as far as I was concerned. Maybe some people who once knew me in person, face-to-face in person, can take in consideration a difference as to that reference compared to just being jovial and satirical in comparison. So, you know, you can go in and do the little rewind to replay that, and you can take that in consideration, okay? So, in those references, if you go to my website, www.susanmeeling.com, which is the same as www.ladydorybell.com, in the book section, compared to my journal blog, The Ornery PSA, the book section has the links to purchase my books through Amazon. And there's a specific book called Finding the Silver Lining, which is satire. It's a satirical viewpoint. And so in that comparison, if you have watched official YouTube videos of mine, where I have been a bit satirical, compared to that just a few seconds ago, you can take that in consideration as to the difference, okay? Now, I had in the reference, and again, subscribe to my official YouTube channel, share the link to my official YouTube channel, and like my official YouTube videos, because it's through my official YouTube channel only for that reference. If I have, in regards of my journal blog, the Ornery PSA, through my website, www.susanmeeling.com. In my journal blog, during the updates, I have given references for certain things if you're going to utilize my journal blog or my official YouTube videos for this instance, as to be capable to do so. It's a little instructional, I guess. And so in that reference too, I went through the Dominant Mentor program after many classes and demos, especially so people in the Austin area would have a better idea to the knowledge of the classes and demos in the San Antonio area compared to the DFW area. The DFW area during the time frames of only had the Dominant Mentor program and possibly the Submissive Mentor program. I'm not sure on that. However, that's pretty much it regarding classes and demos. They had discussions, but classes and demos, that was in San Antonio. And then yes, I had been involved with the Dominant Mentor program where I started in Austin and then graduated in Dallas. Okay? Now, that was the year 2011 though. Now I was working on a lot of stuff. It wasn't just in reference to the 2001 situation at all, because all of my memories, as best as I could, as I've brought forward regarding the updates to my journal blog, The Ornery PSA, on my website, www.susanmeeling.com. Again, the same as www.ladydoribell.com. And in that reference, that's from 2019, mainly through 2021. Now, while some people may have wished that I hadn't gotten over or whatever aspects of, in comparison to the updates, as I had explained, then there's a behavior pattern that you can see to confirm the situations as to whatever years that I once knew them in person, face-to-face in person, to that comparative aspect. Because obviously, if that were actually whatever hypothetical wishful claims, the reality is obviously different, and the behavior patterns are still the same. So there are the social media references as well, to be capable to take that in consideration. Whether it's text messages, social media messages, emails, phone calls, what have you. Okay? So while I explained in whichever area I was, and it doesn't even need to be in the reference of the what is supposed to be considered the adult consenting lifestyle, but it also in reference to just the general what is considered to those individuals as the vanilla sector, and or scuba diving, which can be whichever way. Okay? So, I was born and raised in New Jersey, grew up going to a whole bunch of different areas. Now, you would actually have to have that specific combination to have that direct knowledge. And not just the knowledge, but the understanding and comprehension of. Otherwise, you don't have that at all. You have to have the exact timeline fully to have that knowledge to understand, to comprehend. Otherwise, if you don't have that specifically, as to that specific combination, you can have knowledge and you can understand knowledge, but you cannot comprehend the experience. That's just the reality. You can have some experiences that can be utilized as a metaphor, but you cannot have the actual experiences from that specific time frame with that specific combination of. No matter what. It's just the facts. It would be the equivalent of a reenactment-ish, but not. Okay? In comparison. Now, you could still have the real-life factors, and yet at the same time, to me, it wouldn't be anything other than, yes, okay, real life, and yet at the same time, because I've already lived through certain areas and times, that's just, it's not a reenactment, and yet it's whatever it is, sort of thing, okay? So, I've made references regarding my journal blog, the Ornery PSA, on my website, www.susanmeeling.com, which is the same as www.ladydoorbell.com, as to those particular updates. And so, in those references regarding those particular situations, I've been working on quite a few things to those clarifications. Not interested in a lot of factors. I've explained that. In person, face to face, in person. Some people have had whatever opinions they have had in comparison to my reality. That's their interpretations. So their interpretations are exactly that definition, their interpretations, compared to my reality. So my reality is exactly as I explained, in comparison. So while some people, whenever I may have known them in person, face to face, in person, may have whatever viewpoint they might have, if they remember me specifically saying whatever combination of words of, but the overall aspects, well, then they were officially informed, and they, through those factors, had consented as to. In comparison to any hypothetical situation regarding any needless drama at all, that my son, that was a minor at the time, should not have dealt with, and or my daughter, who was a minor at the time, should not have dealt with, and myself, who whatever amount of time having been awake from my coma, should not have dealt with, because that would not be consenting at all, whatsoever. That should not have occurred because obviously there would need to be the official aspects to being informed. Okay. So there were a lot of situations that were going on in the 1980s and 1990s in the tri-state area. Again, T-R-I, not T-R-Y. Greco-Roman. Okay? Now, when I had been involved at the time frame, most specifically to the state of Texas, 2009 through 2012, I had been as honest as I had been, which people in the state of Washington would be in the knowledge of as to that. Regarding Club Sapphire, as well as in regards of Oregon to the Velvet Rope. So if other people decided that they were playing a game non-consensually, because I would have to be informed, and that would officially require that. Otherwise, it's non-consensual, and then that translates to different legal definitions. In comparison to the satirical aspects as to finding the silver lining in my book section on my website, www.susanmeeling.com, which is the same as www.ladydoorbell.com. So my initial starting point had been just so I could do that for where I was born and raised. Just so I could assist, because I knew that there were certain aspects, especially regarding my biological father, as to closure aspects in comparison to my biological mother, who didn't ever drive around in the New York City area. Anybody who has ever been in the car with my biological mother and or my biological little sister driving, which that is as it is, you can distinguish the difference between their styles of driving compared to my biological father, and especially to myself. You could see which one would align to which individual. So most likely in this hypothetical, my biological little sister would be very similar to my biological mother's style of driving. In comparison, probably even similar in regards to passenger aspects, in comparison to how I'd probably be quite similar to my biological father as to driving. I did learn directly from him as to how to drive. So my driving lessons were from my biological father, who had been a taxi cab driver and an EMS driver in the New York City area. So, when I need to go somewhere and I need to take care of something, and so, but I didn't learn in that area. No. I learned in Illinois how to drive, which, I'm not saying that has anything to do with any. So I sometimes, every now and then, sometimes I can drive a little fast. Sometimes. So back in the 1980s and 1990s, there weren't the regulations on EMS drivers as there are now at all whatsoever in any capacity. So, I just, so I'm not saying that I can drive fast sometimes. What I am saying is my insurance company knows. And so do law enforcement, Nonetheless, usually 9 times out of 10, when I've had to speed, usually it has to do with either an emergency that I need to get to, and or I'm handling other situations. And so in certain references, despite, Indiana as to those factors, and that it's just 127 miles an hour that was on the winning of the speeding. I redlined a 1993 Honda Civic when, however, in my defense, I pulled over. I just had to, pop it out of fifth gear and then let the car slow down. And then wait. And that's how that went. Yeah. And because it was 1999 and I was 17 years old, well, I couldn't do certain things. I was across state. No, I might have been 16. Whatever year. Whatever. I was, for some areas it's not that big of a deal. People who were born and raised in New Jersey would understand how I could be in a different viewpoint as to that aspect. And so I had kind of, so it's just, in my defense, just a little fast. And so, different areas of Illinois, especially Crystal Lake, so there's a few options of what teenagers could do. I'm not into pop culture, so movies are out of the question. Then there's that cruising of the strip where you drive back and forth and yell out of a car at one another and then you go talk or whatever. There's other stuff that I don't really know, and that is that. Or you find the underground scene, whether that's the dancing underground scene, such as raves, or racing. And, I was a little good at racing. Oh, a little bit. It's a tea type. Just a little bit. It's just a little bit. I don't want to, say that I wasn't good at racing, because I usually placed first every time. But, also, I was allowed, because the guys knew me, they allowed me to utilize their cards. And so, there was that. And, I was looking at it as practice. That's what I looked at it as. I thought it was practice for, other things such as, there's the formation of the U.S. Space Force. And in 1999, that guy I was dating at the time, I was like, let's put a 442 up in this 1993 Honda Civic. Come on. And he was all like, no, again, you don't know. And so more recently, I learned about this guy named Bob Lazar. I didn't even know, and it's like, I was thinking not only the 442, go and put some Nas in there with that 442. I'm not saying that wouldn't be, I'm just saying, I tend, and then a little bit of turbo boost, Not saying that I like to drive fast. What I am saying is I've driven fast here and there. So, and so can't really do that too much in the New Jersey area. Then there's New York State though. So, Mike drove in New York State, and usually it was great because I was the only one who stayed awake. So what would happen is when we'd go to New York State, he'd have Anna talk, and then inevitably she'd get tired. And so then she'd fall asleep, because her and my biological little sister would talk and yip, 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 yip. And then when they were out of anything to talk about, they'd just go to sleep. And I'd be in the back seat. All right, now he's gonna speed faster. Yay! So where he may have thought I was asleep, No. Even still, even if he knew I was awake, it's not like I saw the speedometer. So, to me, it was just like, wow, look at how fast. Is that a tree? Or is that the bark of the tree? I'm not saying he drove fast. What I am saying is I learned how to drive from him. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm not saying he sped at all, because I didn't see the speedometer and I didn't see what the speed limit signs were. So officially, I can't say that he sped. What I can say is there were a few times that I thought it was just one tree. And any of the little spaces in between, I thought it was bark in regards of one tree. I'm not saying that's speeding. What I'm saying is that I learned to drive because he taught me. And in regards of my biological mother, she did not want to teach me how to drive because I already had learned from my biological father, and so she tried one time, once. And so this is what happened, okay? So it was, this is just an irony to the first time I had ever attended an event regarding one of the bigger events regarding Temple of Flesh, okay? So in springtime, my biological mother was like, well, now that you learned how to drive on snow, and your biological mother, so, for those who don't know, Temple of Flesh had done a thing about springtime for Hitler, and so my biological mother was in the car, and so she was wanting to, whatever, in comparison to. And so then when, and for those in the state of Texas, you met her older, okay? And if you met her with Patricia, my biological little sister, remember, she likes my biological little sister, and we don't get along, okay? So, while I don't know why this seems apropos, however, so I started driving, and my biological mother started off with, no! What? No, you're going too fast! Okay. Great, I literally just turned the car on and I haven't even put it in reverse. Can you chill? You moved too fast and going. This is, so fast forward a few years in San Antonio, yin yang twins. I don't want to hear you speak, bitch. So anyway, start the car and then go and put it put it in reverse. Why are you doing that? Okay, because that's how you put the car in reverse, okay? Do you really have to do that? Like, yes, I do, because otherwise, if I put it in drive, Mike's gonna be mad because drive goes into the house. So no, well, technically, in that time, drive would drive it into his car and then his car into the house. So everybody who's mad, my biological father, if you've ever seen him angry, most likely you didn't get into a car collision. And if you did, you aren't my biological little sister. Remember, she gets a special treatment, so, remember, it's me who's driving. So, I'm not gonna piss off my biological father. I know better. I will do what I can not to, so that, I go and I put the car in reverse, or the van, I should say, it's the van in reverse. And so I slowly let off of the brake. Did you look that light? Yes. Did you take the rear view? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Are you sure? Yes, I did. Egg donor. Yes, I did. What did you call me? Egg donor. Egg donor. You're an egg donor. Why are you calling me an egg donor? Because that is the nicest words I have for you right now. So then, I I re-release off of the brake and slowly go in reverse. I back out. I go whichever way I go. Are you gonna go in front of the drive? Can I like actually back out of the driveway first? I don't know why. I have this weird sensation that temple of flesh, I don't know what it was about regarding what, however, that uniform fetish ball right about now as far as, so this is in 1999. So I finished backing out fully of the drive. I hadn't fully put the brake on because, you know, people who know how to drive a car, you have to, and then shift it. So I put it in drive. Are you gonna accelerate that? Okay, you know what, egg donor? So I go in slowly. There's a stop sign coming up. Okay, you know what? So then, put your blinker on. Okay, you know what? This is the first and only time that she did. So then, you know, I hadn't even gotten to the stop sign yet. Okay, I had literally only backed out of the driveway and put it in drive and started to put my foot towards the accelerator, okay? This is what I dealt with as my first driving experience with my biological mother in comparison to my biological father, who was like, all right, start the fucking car. Okay. All right, put it in reverse after you check the mirrors. All right. Oh, that's pretty smooth. All right, put it in drive. Okay. Not that fast. Don't accelerate that fast. That's it. Take your foot off the pedal. Don't slam on the brakes. Don't do that. Just coast. Just coast. Just coast. Okay. Blinker. All right. That's a little bit of a sharp stop, but okay. You can work on that. All right. And that's how that was. And so then, okay, going back to my biological mother, see the difference? Why? Yeah, I think this makes sense as far as, so then, get to the stop sign and my biological mother, do you have to stop that way? Do you have to do this? Do you have to do that? Do you have to do this? Don't you think you should look both ways? So internal thoughts. I could make you look both ways in a different capacity. You know, I have two hands and I've done some work in the oceanic waters. So you do not have fun. I might be doing Mike a favor. A huge favor. I might even do Patricia a little bit of a favor, but you know, I definitely would be doing Mike a favor. I really would. I'd really be doing Mike a favor. But you know, you gave me like an egg doning bitch. It's so I look both. You gotta look both ways again because you know, looking both ways 2 times wasn't enough apparently. In Crystal Lake, Illinois. Okay. In the neighborhood. Okay. Near Crystal Lake South High School. Mm-hmm. So I had to look both ways more times because you know. you never know. If some Greyhound bus is gonna come out of nowhere in that area. So then, I go to move my foot from the accelerator, or the brake, to the accelerator. Did you look both ways one more time? Okay. You know what? Look both ways a few more times, and then turn the vehicle slowly, acceleration. And so I was going a whopping 5 miles an hour. You're going so fast in this neighborhood! Put my blinker on, turn into someone's driveway. What are you doing? Put it in reverse, look both ways, check the rear view. What do you think you're doing? The rest of the time, a little chihuahua. The rest. Go back to the driveway of the house. Go. Pull the van up. Put the car in park. Put that emergency brake on. Turn the car off. Throw the keys. Go ahead. Or wait, no. I took the keys, walked out of the car. She's sitting in the car going, what's going on? So I go inside the house, and Mike was sitting in the kitchen smoking a cigarette, and he goes, did you forget something? Nope. Put the keys on the table. And he's like, hands me back the keys. As far as, and I'm like, no. He's like, oh, are you? And so I have the keys in my hand, and he's like, so are you gonna go? No, I'm not going. And so I am not driving in a car with that. And I just New Jersey words. I don't know how you whatever. And he just sat there, and he's like. He didn't laugh. He just sat there. Where the fuck did you learn language like that? Oh my God! And so I go, I stomped up those stairs, and anybody who has dealt with that didn't care. I stormed as I stomped up those stairs. So I go in my room. Turn on my boombox. Can't. So, about 5 to 10 songs later, I hear the door open to the front door area. On stuff in my room. I've got my beta fish there. My beta fish and my beta fish would dance with me every now and then. So my beta fish, I'd move his little bowl near where I would be, and we'd dance and stuff like that together sometimes. And he would dance with me. He'd move one fin one way if I did some stuff, and he'd move his fin the other way. I've had a few situations of my beta fish and I would dance. Every now and then I'd stick my hand in and I'd kind of spin him around, and he just kind of. And yes, it's a fighting fish nonetheless. This is video bad fish. So he just sort of. There's this Corpus Christi aquarium situation, and so that's kind of like a bigger version. Okay, and so kind of do a little bit of this, and he'd break some of his fins. It was as it was. Anyway, so where's Susan? What happened? You bipolar, psychotic, I can't believe I came. You know what? This is why. This is why I had to be cut out of your uterus in a C-section. Yeah, this is why. So then, Susan! Turn the music down. Walk outside my room, then there's Patricia. No. So, go downstairs. Yes, you rang. And my biological father said, tell your mother why you came inside, because I need to know as well as to what happened. So I described that, okay? I'm not that bad. Anybody who has ever been. So that's it. In my defense, I have a sensation I'm pretty well adjusted coming from that situation, despite a few factors. in a lot of ways. So, after waking up from my coma after my head injury on Palm Sunday in the state of Texas, when I had my head injury during basic training in the Army, I had written a letter after some staff to that was a little bit hectic, and then I had received, I had been informed, I should say, that the drill sergeants got a phone call. Yeah, so this is what had happened. So we had this area, we were shining our boots, and so drill sergeants stomp in. Anybody who's been in basic training, they understand this. And so I look up, I got my booth. Ooh, they mad. And I look over at one of the guys, I'm like, I wonder what they're mad at. So then, get on and start pushing, So we were all pushing. So these drill sergeants go and say that they received a phone call from somebody's mother, as we're all pushing. We're all just okay, so I'm actually gonna, in a different capacity. I do have boots on, they're not the same, but nonetheless. So, just down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. And then they're, yelling at everybody as far as that's concerned, And then they're like, okay, so whose parent? Hi. It was probably mine, wasn't it? It was that one, wasn't it? Yeah. And they were like, well, that was quick. Yeah, no, I'm not gonna make everybody else suffer because of my biological mother calling. Yeah, no, hi. You guys, you should get up off the ground, come on. Mind you, this is basic training. No, get up off the ground. And so like one by one they start standing up, and the drill sergeants are like, really, you're gonna just, we were gonna, so you'll just drop like that on what was your childhood like? What happened in your childhood that you would do? What happened in your childhood? Tell us what. And so then, mind you, these are drill sergeants, and they're like, everybody get back to shining your boots. So we go back to shining. And drill sergeant, I think it was, I can't remember whose name it was. He comes over and he's like, what was your mother like? Tell me why you would know that quickly. We didn't even go into description of what actually happened. All we said was we got a call from somebody's mom, and so what did you survive in your childhood? Tell us. And so that two of these drill sergeants, they're just like, no, tell us about that. Tell us. How, because we had to talk with her, so how did that go? You're alive. Wow. So that's cool. So cool. So tell us. What happened? How bad was your childhood? That you would be here at 17 years old. What happened? Tell us about it. And so I can make a joke. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows my sorrows. Although it's not a joke in certain references regarding certain factors at that point in time. So, I needed to do some updates. Yeah, I had to do some updates regarding my journal blog, the Ornery PSA, through my website, www.susanmeeling.com, which is the same as www.ladydorybell.com. And so, yeah. And so, I had explained this factor, and then so I was dealing with a bunch of stuff, and I'd also brought up those laptop situations regarding Geek Squad. Just so happened, anytime my biological mother needlessly was involved with something she wasn't invited to, because you can get that example as to why she wasn't invited into a few aspects. Because anytime I went to actually go do anything in the proper way, why didn't you do it? And so, it's one of those I won't know. Because go look in the mirror. I don't care if it is the bathroom mirror or the black mirror. You know why, just by that, as far as that's concerned. That's why. And so, here those references for those clarifications and verifications. And so I gave warnings to people throughout San Antonio. Yes, I did. In San Antonio, in the pagan community, I gave warnings as to how my biological mother was, most specifically. And then there was also a San Antonio Pagan Pride Day, and if anybody ever spoke with my biological mother about me, that was stupid. That was dumb. You don't do that at all. That's dumb. That's stupid. You don't do that. No. Bad idea. Very bad idea. Okay? But that was back in 2005, at the same time in the lifestyle in regards of classes and demos and so on and so forth. It's during the first separation from my now dead ex-husband. Okay? And so, a bunch of these situations that had occurred. And then there's the time frame of 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, and then that situation. And so, for as many people who have claimed, I know how people are from New Jersey. Well, if you spoke with my biological mother, no. If you spoke with my biological father, no. And if you spoke with my biological little sister, no. If If you spoke with them in comparison to speaking with me in truth and honesty, you don't know how people from New Jersey actually are. There are different types of people from New Jersey. So if you thought that, go to the biological aspects of, wrong answer. Wrong. No. No, one and only sponsor. Hi. So you don't go to them at all whatsoever. That's not who you go to. No. Very bad idea in every capacity. Because then there's other people, from New Jersey, and you just go directly to them. But you do it with etiquette and you do it with respect. In what capacities that they have given a leeway to do so. So if you don't do it within that leeway of, then that's other issues, okay? So if you have a specific, because New Jerseyans, it doesn't matter if they're Republican or Democrat, you have a very specific way that is done. And if you go through in that reference, you go the wrong way. No matter what. It's just wrong. No, don't go that way. At all. If you do so, you stir up needless problems, as what happened in the 1980s and 1990s in New Jersey. So you'll learn what actual New Jersey is in that capacity comparatively. You don't ever. That was a mistake, because a bunch of people from New York City had been accustomed to going through, so you had to go through agencies or whatever. People in New Jersey, that's not how that works. So what would happen is people from New York City would come down to New Jersey, speak with people that weren't the individual to speak with, and then a bunch of stuff got stirred up, because when the individual to actually speak with was always the one and only person to actually speak with, then a bunch of situations happened, and starting more so in the late 1980s, but especially throughout the 1990s. And it was a huge problem. There were a lot of people that I had known where so there were a lot of problems that had occurred, especially in the 1990s, because a bunch of people thought that they had the right, because they thought the way it is in New York City was the same way in New Jersey, and it's not at all. And then you had people that would go to certain individuals only during certain time frames, and then because they wouldn't give the background of, they stirred up a bunch of problems, and then there were other issues. And then there were business situations where there was only one person to go through, and then they went to other people instead, and then those other people wanted, ironically, in this reference, they wanted to be like New York City, and they didn't get permission from the one and only to get permission from, and then there were those issues as far as how that went. And so there were a few reasons why there were a few situations and it started really in the 1970s because of the way things were going in the 1970s. So it really kicked in the 1980s heavily. And so it was a lot of stuff that kind of became this massive problem. And so in the 1980s, I had a nightmare. Not because of specific whatever, no, I just had a vision and how the vision went and all that sort of stuff. And then later was 1993 regarding, and then 2001. And so there's been many more times than that particular prophecy aspect, though I've had a few situations where I've been very accurate, very, some people have told me it's considered eerie how accurate at times, which I don't intend to be. That's not how the intention is. And so I've dealt with that, especially in New Jersey, I dealt with that with some people. And so some really didn't mind. There were a few Italian families. They appreciated it more so, but I'm not Italian. I do have Italian in me, but I'm not actually Italian. So they had appreciated that a lot. Though in regards of other situations, it was as it was, and so yeah, that's kind of a thing. And so in regards of the updates to my journal blog, The Ornery PSA, website www.susanmeeling.com, which is the same as www.ladydorybell.com. Then there were those updates from 2019 through 2021, mainly because of having to take care of several factors because of what I had informed people back in especially 2004 into 2005, whether you take in consideration 2004, the San Antonio pagan scene and or the supposed to be consenting adult lifestyle scene, and then 2009 through 2012, same thing. And so, and that includes even in scuba diving, though also in reference to the general vanilla sector-ish aspects. And so while those situations were as they were, the updating has been a big factor of making sure to be clear, because I had been to the DC area. I had told people about the DC Aquarium that I had been to, and I'd only been there once or twice. So with the knowledge that I only been to the DC Aquarium once or twice, yeah, there's the stuff as far as New York City especially. Yes, there's no denying that. I grew up going around the areas. However, the possibilities as to what I was concerned about, as to, I didn't have the words until more recently. So you have the hearings now regarding the 6th of January 2021, and I had been in the area, not at that. I had been at the Ellipse, and then I went to the Marine Corps Museum, which is an irony because earlier I had seen a clip with a cute patootie Marine. Nonetheless, I went to the Marine Corps Museum and walked around the areas of, and I had made a video regarding while I was there, a little one. And so then that situation occurred, but because of so many other combined factors, so needing to do all that work, because especially because of the DC Aquarium. And so because of the DC Aquarium, I didn't see it there in December of 2020. And so I didn't go up to DC, though though I didn't see anything about the DC Aquarium that should have popped up in regards to that particular search. I found the Virginia Aquarium, and I went there. A little sea lion swimming around. However, the DC Aquarium didn't come up. When I stayed in the Virginia area, there wasn't anything about the DC Aquarium. And so then there's that factor to take in consideration. And so then, because I had arrived early and then stayed later than just during the time frame of the 6th of January, I went around a bunch of areas looking as well as listening because of the way certain things are. And so I had explained, mainly in reference to the area of New York City, because of where I was born and raised, that Tri township area. But I had also informed people that I had been to the DC Aquarium, or Washington DC Aquarium. And that's more along those particular aspects to the updates. Yes, absolutely, 100% regarding New York City. There's no doubt about it. Fully acknowledge that. Haven't ever hidden that. That is one of the largest reference aspects too. And yet then there's the DC area. I didn't have many experiences in that area at all. I only had a small number up. And so when, in reference to different areas and people that I have spoken with in person, face-to-face in person, especially most specifically, absolutely in regards of New York City, I don't deny that. Absolutely in reference to the state of New Jersey, I don't deny that. Absolutely regarding New York State, I don't deny that. Same thing in regards of Pennsylvania and Maryland and Delaware and DC and Virginia. I don't deny that. I haven't ever denied that. But that area specifically, because I hadn't been there very often, especially in comparison to New York and Pennsylvania, that journal blog updating regarding my website, www.susanmeeling.com, and the ornery PSA from 2019 through especially into 2021, I had to go through all of those details because of all the situations that I dealt with throughout the different areas. And while some people, whatever opinions, whatever feelings in those capacities, well, I don't hold politics that way. I don't have that. I can acknowledge my biases. I don't deny my biases at all. I do not deny my biases. I acknowledge whatever could be in those factors up, so that way it's honesty in every capacity of, so that way there's not the, well, you're so-and-so and you're again this and how that gets done. And so when you have the knowledge that the Pentagon, most people remember New York City, but only in reference to the Twin Towers. Most people, I've seen news videos regarding some people since the year 2001. I also have had the situations that I've had, which I haven't denied either. And so I've made it aware to different individuals. No, I have got to, I don't have a legal obligation officially. And yet officially I do, because I'm medically retired from the Army. So officially, I actually do have a legal obligation, and yet it's in an unofficial way. It's that most gray of gray areas because of these situations. And so the reality is the reality on that. And so I've posted some stuff throughout the time frame to those updates. And yes, absolutely working on the tri-state, TRI state, or triple state, however you view that, regarding New York and Pennsylvania and New Jersey, not having ever denied the aspects of where I was born and raised and where I grew up going around. But I brought up that I had been to the DC Aquarium. And so with the clarifications and verifications and all that sort of stuff, especially through 2019 through 2021, well, anybody who's ever had any situation where they had to bring whatever before a law firm, like a law firm, just one law firm, well, you would have that knowledge. That's Washington, D.C. as to the DC Aquarium. I don't know how many Congress or Senate are from a law firm or are an attorney themselves, or however many they know. Yeah, I obviously have to take New York City. That's heavy duty work. No denying that at all. No, I don't deny that. Washington, D.C. This is a Pentagon. This is a Pentagon. Yeah, that's a Pentagon. And so it's not in Washington, D.C., but it's a Pentagon. Yeah, that's a Pentagon. Yeah, it's a Pentagon. And so I remember the Washington, D.C. Aquarium. So I have to do all these updates. I have to go and make sure I have words, because, you know, what attorney finds that words are important? And they have to be truthful and accurate as much as possible. And then anybody who's ever, well, let me go make sure, because it's one thing regarding New Jersey law firms. That's one thing. That's one thing. New York State law firms, it depends. New York City law firms, Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, so then there's Pennsylvania State law firms. Combine those, all of those. You know, I mean, what state has an elected official in Congress? What state has an elected official in Senate? What state possibly could have someone? I registered it through the Library of Congress regarding finding a silver lining and finding the silver lining, okay? And I had already discussed in person, face-to-face in person throughout the state of Texas about that. And so while I, in comparison to General George Washington's private office, in comparison to that satirical, you know, potty humor, okay, regarding, General George Washington's privately treated, his private office is down back behind New Jersey. Well, there really is. From my childhood, I remember this. I remember the exact design of the actual area of, which was my favorite area. So there was the plexiglass, okay, or whatever it would be called, about this high, if I was a biological adult, maybe this high, was ironically a black fuzzy fabric. I don't know what it was, like carpet, but not, okay? And then the floor, it was like 1980s, whatever style, regarding the carpeting along that. There was a hallway over here, and then the albino crocodiles were off to the side from this hallway. And so you had to go a little bit before you could actually see them. And they had a bunch of rock formations. They were kind of, from what I remember, they were kind of terracotta color. Kind of almost similar regarding the color that I had painted. So I had a man cave in my house in Carrollton, and depending on the lighting, was essentially very similar to the coloration of a few of the rocks. Some of the other rocks for that area were similar to, in Colorado, there's a few rock formations that are similar, and then Utah, and I know they're neighboring states, though there is kind of a coloration similarity, though difference if you know what to look for. So in Vail, Colorado, that'd be one, and then in Utah, where the Hopi is kind of another color for some of the references for rock colorations in reference to the back area to where the albino crocodiles were. And then their flat area where I had, so they had the water. So the water, when I was a child, it was, compared to how tall I am now, it'd probably be about to here, as far, with the heels on, by the way, as far as that, because of the, whatever that would be called. It was like a little bit of a shelf, maybe 5-6 inches from the plexiglass or whatever the wording is for to the edge, and it was slightly curved regarding that. And I know that it was it was kind of like a U-shape area, but it was kind of tucked away. So it was like a cul-de-sac to a degree, for a larger reference in comparison to the arrangement of the DC Aquarium area, but it was more squared and cornered, but not. And so then there were, if I remember, so the dividing lines of the sizes of glass, that for those who would understand that, if I remember, there are about 5, maybe 7, maybe 9 of them regarding the albino crocodiles. And then the sign is it's kind of like the Harley Davidson color brown, as far as the words, not the words being that color, but the background, and then the words were in white, and it was carved. I remember that. And then they had some of those, little plants here and there regarding whatever the botany sort of plants, and then you could see them swim. So from the area of the carpet area to the water was about to here. And then above that was the formation where they, literally, getcha, let me see which one of you, and getcha swam around after working, ran up and got on top of the rock. Gotcha! Went around, did the same thing next to getcha. Good. Go up there. I got up there, no problem. And in reference to the guy in the suit, that was it's like this, or maybe that, whatever way. It was like that, and so getcha good. Well, in 2021, regarding the 6th of January, well, just in case, during December 2020, just in case, maybe, I can go out to the area during and see what's going on regarding the ellipse area. That's fine. I can have an extra amount of time, before the 6th of January and after the 6th of January to kind of look around and see, maybe, where I was regarding Kitty Hawk. Yeah, you know, I did drive all the way out to Virginia and up to New Jersey as well. Though, you know, let me see, maybe, I go take a look. And so I've created a few official YouTube videos of mine referencing that before. And more recently, yes, I acknowledge, though I've been processing some of the, because of the culmination of situations. And so I do remember that, and with the updates to my journal blog, The Ordinary PSA, on my website, www.susanmeeling.com, which is the same as www.ladydorybell.com, I did make another attempt to actually do so after the transfer situation, though that went the way it did instead because I wanted to see things in a certain lighting, but it was as it was as far as that was concerned, so went back. But that situation regarding the DC Aquarium, well, I didn't drive. I was a child, if I remember, I think I was in, it might have been when I was in middle school, though it could have been late elementary school. But I know I went a handful of times to the area, so there's that to take in consideration. And, or later elementary school, I should say, or latter elementary school, whatever. And so I made attempts where I could because I knew what I'd already dealt with. And so in the best possible way to clarify all that. And then because of my scuba diving, those factors up how people assume certain things. So in regards of that civilian recreational scuba dive, as per their grouping area, as they said it was that in comparison to myself, well, I'd been honest regarding several factors. And so, you know, between situations regarding the after effects from my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, having and in the, not just elected, obviously, but especially in the political types, the way they view and have their situations regarding, so I was involved, and even though the numbers obvious difference, those factors as to being involved with what's supposed to be considered the consenting adult lifestyle in comparison to those other factors in that hypothetical, of course, especially in regards of Washington state. And in comparison to the state of Texas, well, as many times as I volunteered, you know, that technology stuff. So those clarifications and verifications, because, you know, how many times I volunteered at Club Sapphire and being checked in because of technology. Unlike the state of Texas, where only in a handful of locations would you have that type of a check-in compared to Sapphire, where I was volunteering but not in that capacity. You know, where I did security walks and took care of the DJ, took care of the office, assisted with the food, made sure the bar was taken care of, rolled up towels, all that sort of stuff. And so in that reference regarding the DC Aquarium, yeah, that journal blog updating the Ornery PSA on my website, www.susanmeeling.com, the same as www.ladydorybell.com. Anybody who knows about that sort of aspect, I kind of, you know, gotta clarify all that. And so, you know, I can only do so much. Even though I didn't do anything, you know, obviously. Be honest on that. Especially if it's kind of funny because I can refer not only to the first event that I've been to regarding Temple of Flashes to Springtime and Hitler, regarding my biological mother and my and then that. Don't be jealous. Then there's the exotic Easter metaphors where I actually had performed regarding that. It's irony regarding Pervs in Toyland, as far as the title. Anyway, there's the irony regarding the scuba dive location as to Carrollton, Texas schools. So that there's that. Be kind of funny. There were no bananas in pajamas. For those who don't know, I've referred to different types of wetsuits. So I had a bikini wetsuit. I had a Farmer John. It's actually a Farmer John wetsuit. So it's all the way down to the ankles, and it's like overalls that are made into a wetsuit. But fully fitted. Okay. And then the second portion is long sleeves, and then they're called shorties. So they go to here, and totally black, just black everything. Because I had work to do, okay? So I didn't graduate basic training. I don't deny that. No, I don't at all. And remember, I don't know if there's any Disney movies. I don't think there are, but maybe. But remember my upbringing as far as whatever pop culture. So I had black everything, and then my scuba mask had black on the outside, and then I had my black booties. Sure, I had my white fins and my white snorkel. That's fine. Compared to yellow onesies. Or bananas and pajamas, because technically they were all males, and there is a Gwen Stefani song that I can make a joke in that particular reference. It is. Just gonna leave it at that. I'm not just gonna throw that out there in that capacity. And so, that's just, it's just irony. Comparison to my black gear. Although I guess that's a different version of Black Lives Matter. Obviously, I know my skin tone, but my scuba dive gear was all black. All black. Completely blacked out. As far as that was concerned, all of my gear was, I had work to do, as far as that was concerned. And so then there's that regarding the irony, that particular reference, because, a general in a general's age just couldn't get into my military file when I was 17 years old in medical hold unit, and I couldn't. Yeah, I didn't graduate basic training, but a one-star general couldn't, he didn't have staff that was capable to get into my military records. I did go do a records request about what Senator Patty Murray had and her staff were capable to get was it. As far as that was concerned, yeah, that was about the same as far, and so that's my, yeah. But so a senator and her staff in the year 2018, 2019 was capable to get about an inch of paperwork. A one-star general in the year 2000 had sent his aide to be a company commander. So there's probably a similar, I was just 17, that's all. And so, there's that. So, you know. Just saying. So I had to do these updates. Journal blog, ornery PSA, website www.susanmeeling.com, saves www.ladydorybell.com, because it seemed important. You know, when you take in consideration a 1-star general could not get into a E0 or basic, did not graduate basic training. Did not graduate basic training. Article 15. E0 by technicalities. But it's the E1. It's the rank. And so just a 1-star general. That's all. You know, anybody who has the military background, that's all. It's just a 1-star general. That's all, you know. How long has someone who's a 1-star general been in the Army by that time? So, you know, in comparison, then you have a senator, you know, and so only, and that includes the envelopes that pieces of paper were put into as well. Yeah, that's what that is. You just think about that. Yeah. So, you know, yeah. And then I got Grandpa got it. So, which, you know, that updating seems like it might have been important as well. A few other factors. So, you know, there's get you, got you, good, okay? And that DC Aquarium, you know, so I've had to do a few updates. I gave the clarifications and the verifications as far as I was concerned as best as I could. And so, you know, got the words as best as I could to do what I could to explain where I could. And so while I'm not certain regarding other factors, well, I do know that it's supposed to be the consenting adult lifestyle. And consent requires being informed officially. In that comparison to those hypotheticals regarding certain types. So there's the haves, have nots, I think is what I saw the name of the show as far as I was concerned. Maybe there's a pop culture reference there. I think his name is Tyler Perry. As far as certain situations, and that was just local in comparison. So, you know, what is the difference between consenting and being informed of in comparison? So those clarifications and verifications, those regards. So, you know, especially when it comes to the knowledge of NASA having been around for a while, and then in conjunction to that, the official formation of the U.S. Space Force and the space stations that have been around for a while, and whatever country aspects. So again, I'm going to put the link to a speech that was given by then President Ronald Reagan, and maybe that link in the information section will assist as to the larger understanding in a few capacities, maybe, hopefully for the best. And so, thanks for tuning in to my official YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe to my official YouTube channel, like my official YouTube videos. Go to my website, www.susanmeeling.com, which is the same as www.ladydorybell.com. Journal blog, The Ornery PSA. And there's a large amount of stuff that I've been working on. The botany regarding the specific plants as to that area of the DC Aquarium, that I've been making attempts to figure out how to describe that. I've only more recently been capable to figure certain things as to the basic training area, because in March of 2000 and April of 2000, I don't know if there's snow in Oklahoma in those months at all. I don't know what the weather is out there in any capacity. What I do know is the weather was warm, and I could tell as to the sod in reference to the areas in comparison, because of my biological father having done a lot of gardening, and then Old Tenor Presbyterian Church, and all those particular factors as to the yard regarding the property and the house in New Jersey, and then all the different areas that my biological father had been around and I went with as to the different plant life aspects. So those types of situations to pay attention to are important for that knowledge. So I know it was warm though. I know that we had the guys in medical hold unit, they were surprised that I had both summers and winters, because I had been in basic training. They didn't understand why I had both summers and winters, because they had remembered their basic training. And so so in the United States of America, where whatever state would be, that could be considered summer and winter-ish weather aspects, because Oklahoma, from the time that I had been, I wouldn't consider that an area that would really need summers officially. I mean, to a degree, yes, but in an overall sort of way. So I guess maybe that might have been confusing to some of the guys in medical hold unit, and being my age, and then my file, as far as that's concerned, being similar to my scuba dive gear, as far as that's concerned. So hopefully that assists in a positive way. So you guys have a good day. Go to my website, www.susanmeeling.com, and that's the same as www.ladydorybell.com. Again, possibly there's a bit of a difference regarding the reference to satire, or a comical sort of aspect, in comparison to if I was actually being being mean in comparison. Reference to Finding the Silver Lining. And so, for one, or a few reference, possibly. So, make sure to subscribe to my official YouTube channel, like my official YouTube videos, share the links to my official YouTube videos, and if you're going to leave a comment, make sure to have etiquette and respect. Have a good day. Today is the 18th of June, 2022. Saturday, the 18th of June, 2022, as far as I know.